thoracic spine, be the disc, soft disc, hard disc, posterior ligamentum ossification, foraminal stenosis or calcified disc. So most of the thoracic spine pathology nowadays can be dealt with endoscopy. As been discussed before, conventional approach carries lot of morbidity. So thanks to this person, so whom I got trained, fortunately I visited him for a few days. So he is the one who worked on cadavers and published this remarkable paper. As previous speakers were telling, the anatomy of thoracic spine, you can see the compared to lumbar spine, the exiting route goes cranially. This is an important image you should never forget. As a result of which, your foramen working space, the cambian space increases. So your exiting route is away. So that's very important. So what is the evidence of endoscopy today? Because endoscopy, thoracic spine should be the one last should be done. So so much of literature already available in the PubMed now. So both open versus endoscopy, a lot of things have been debated, discussed, mainly regarding the incision, the use of fixation, blood loss, and the morbidity post-op, post-decompression morbidity, as Ajay was telling. So these all things can be definitely curtailed with the endoscopy. So there are so many papers regarding disc surgery already. So recently Dr. Sanjay published this paper on disc in 2025, which got published 1 month back. For ossification ligamentum flavum also, there is so much of literature there, which reads about the techniques, the outcomes, especially most of the studies of OLF are from China. But definitely, yes, at this point of time, the level of evidence is very level 2 for ossified ligament flavum. But the all other, for say, disc surgeries, as literature is not that much. It's only a comparative or retrospective studies. We need lot of studies for this, so maybe everyone can contribute their work so that we can publish. Maybe we can have a level 2 evidence at least in future, so where we can show the advantage of endoscopy over open surgery. So definitely we need more studies, we need more data to say, yes, this is good. Today, definitely it is advantageous. These slides have been showed already by my colleague. So definitely such cases, it's very easy where, as Dr. Manoj sir was telling, showed in the video, most of the time we cannot enter the disc. So we might have to drill the facet first, then enter the disc. If we are entering the disc, we are very fortunate that day, but most of the time we might not enter the disc. So we land in the foramen and identify the pedicle first. That is the best way to identify the pedicle facet first, then start drilling. So that's the easy way to do it. This has been showed. I'll just skip this. This has been showed. So this is a post-op, pre-op. Cases like this, so where there is a ventral and dorsal pathology. Dr. Kim showed MRI similar case. Then as the classical teaching, Ajay said, ventral pathology, tackle the ventral pathology. Then if patients still have symptoms, go posteriorly. So this went anteriorly it was done. You can see how much clearance we can give with the anterior surgery. So go transforaminal, drill, shave off the rib head, remove the facet partially, and you can achieve excellent results. This is a case, so this is a case of D2, D3. The patient had a persistent symptoms, failed the conservative management. This is anatomy you should see. So this is anatomy where you see the third rib head is completely in the foramen, and you can see the facet. So you start drilling the pedicle here and the part of facet. So here in thoracic, the descending facet comes first, then the ascending facet. Because the facet is more horizontal, it's away or opposite. So I went there, can see here, I drilled the entire facet and rib head, entered inside, and this is a post-op. You can see the entire thecal sac, I went almost till midline beyond. So this is an incision. So this is how we can manage either posterior or anterior. So this is some posterior examples of ligamentum flavum. So this is what you can achieve. You can see here 1 year follow-up of a patient as if you have not done anything there. This patient again was treated as some tumor. It was a ossified yellow ligamentum flavum. So you can remove it, going there, remove completely. That's the disc. That's the lateral edge of the root. So I drill little bit more lateral, and nowadays I do en bloc resection. Case like this, go ipsilateral, remove the last 2 slides. You can remove the entire ossified ligamentum flavum en bloc. So this way your manipulation on the cord is very less. So this is how you decompress en bloc. So one more case, you can decompress en bloc, 2 levels has been done. So definitely thoracic pathology should be tried last, lumbar, cervical, then you graduate to thoracic spine. So we'll start the discussion. I think we can call all the presenters.
All the presenters, please.
We have all the presenters ahead, please.
Any doubts, please raise. You can come to the mic and ask. So I just have a question, Ajay, to Ajay. First, Rohit, Dr. Rohit, for your, you presented your case study of 5 cases of ossified ligamentum flavum. How often you see a post-op increased paresthesias, the posterior column symptoms in a patient where you have done a ossified ligamentum flavum excision posteriorly?
In one patient, we had transient paraparesis actually, but paresthesia symptoms not they similar as in a pre-op status.
And any time have you seen any increase in the MRI signal? Preoperatively, patient had a myelomalacia signal, and you do post-op, follow post-op. Do you see any increasing in the signal?
Yes, sir. Actually, the both post-op MRI which I saw, they were on the.
I think you can come on the stage. That would be more better.
The speakers can come please on the stage.
So both the post-op MRI which I saw, they were immediate post-operative period, and in both of them there were a significant signal changes. So that was the edema, and I think that may be related with some neural manipulation which has happened.
Professor Kim, did you notice that there are any changes in the cord post-surgery, especially posterior approach? You have done a ligamentum flavum excision. Did you see any changes in the MRI post-op, follow post-op?
Pardon, question again?
So you have done a ossified ligamentum flavum excision, posterior approach. You do a post-operative MRI, they may be immediate or 3 months later. Did you see any changes in the cord?
Spinal cord.
Yeah, spinal cord.
I gave the 2 talk. Firstly, your question is that I immediately checking the post-operative MRI, but I'm checking next day again. Because of the endoscopic spine surgery always related to fluid collection. Because of that, the immediate post-op MRI usually showing some compressed nerve, but usually there is some fault. True image you can see the next day. You have to drain the full images, full fluid, and also your question that in the cervical and thoracic, I have so many cases of myelopathy, but in the endoscopic spine surgery, in spite of that, before some spinal cord signal change, the after increase so high, so larger, but usually, fortunately, the patient symptom more improved, and also usually it decreases more than 6 months later. Immediately after or 3 months later, not decrease, but it sustained for a long time, mostly more than 6 months. And also, second, my talk is that you talking that some postoperative paresthesia, but we know that the endoscopic transfemoral approach is a real minimized option of the endoscopic spinal surgery and spinal surgery. But unfortunately, the transfemoral approach is a very weak point in the decompression. Because of that, in so many my cases have some myelopathy with some disc pathology. I always doing the transforaminal and intraminal decompression together. In the posterior decompression is very, very important in the myelopathy patient. Not only some central part, but also some, it needs sometimes it decompress so cranial, so caudal, sometimes some facet, so much facet damage. That is not making the instability. Rather than some decompression is more important.
So to add to this, what in my experience I have seen, there is a mild increase in the paresthesias post-op. Maybe because of the saline pressure, we don't know. So what in my cases, 3 to 4 cases had post-op paresthesias, especially burning paresthesias, which recovered eventually. But definitely yes, that those were disabling to the patient post-op.
Sukumar,
So
can I give one more talk?
yes, yes.
Yeah. In Korea also, so many endoscopic spine surgeon, we always worry about that the spinal cord damage, and we always talking that some fluid irrigation pressure and the radio frequency heat injury it will give the postoperative paresthesia. But I'm thinking completely different. But in so many my cases, I give the pressure about 150. So high pressure. There is not danger to the spinal cord. Rather than the more danger is that the incomplete decompression.
Yeah.
There's more danger.
Yes.
And punchy and incomplete decompression is more danger. Actually, the pressure is not danger. But anyway, that needs some caution, but differently, there is not danger.
Yeah. And a question to Ajay, when you are doing transforaminal approach, what is your usual modality? Like you target the disc first, or you always do foraminotomy or foraminoplasty, where you increase the volume of the foramen and then address the pathology?
You have to create this space. Actually, getting the needle also becomes very easy with the Jamshedi. That is one thing which should be attempted. Secondly, but while placing the scope in, it doesn't go completely inside. So you have to actually create space from the first obstruction you feel. So it could be anything where you have docked. So it could be to start with from usually the pedicle and the lateral aspect of the facet. And as you go higher up, you have to do a lot of rib head excision also. Then only you reach ventral to the actual working area.
So Manoj sir, what are your thoughts about it?
You know, as I just said, that preoperatively, draw a line from the mid-pedicle line along the facet to the skin, and that line you put your needle down there. Needle is thin, it will just go in. Now, since the foramen are tight, you've got the manual reamers over the guide wire. Guide wire is the thinnest thing which you can have. Just put it in the needle, and over the guide wire, just keep increasing the size of the reamer. It will ream. You don't have to see where is facet, where is rib head, where is pedicle. There's no need. Just keep on increasing it. It will increase to the size of the cannula. You just put in that and start your work.
Okay.
Dr. Ajay, do you use cages when you do the thoracic disc?
No.
You remove the disc
No,
and you cages.
no.
Anyone
There's only
using the
decompression
cages?
what you do.
Anyone use cages or is it
Nothing.
posture stabilization?
No
with the fixation?
stabilizers, no instrumentation, no disc.
And if there are
cages.
sometimes there is segmental vessel in the foramen.
You're
So
not
the bleeding
actually.
lot of the time bleeding happens.
Usually you don't find such bad bleeders, and you are able to tackle it with a simple RF.
Because we
Not-
are generally do the all the extended extraforaminal approaches with the help of tubes. So I am basically a tubular surgeon.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I will use all OLF with the tubes and all approaches of extended extraforaminal approaches for the thoracic disc and all anterior ventral pathology of the thoracics. So okay, so majority times we follow. I know about the nerve roots is not an issue. Nerve roots is completely separately upside. But sometimes there is a segmental vessels are coming
The
inside.
beauty of the transforaminal approach is that you are able to identify them and coagulate them before they bleed. So that is something which happens because it is underwater, it already compresses the vessels. So it becomes very small and you are able to identify it and coagulate it before you handle them.
Okay.
Otherwise in open surgeries you definitely get more bleeding. In tubular also I get a lot of bleeding. Posterior direct surgeries also I get a lot of thoracic bleeding, but not in endoscopy.
Oh. Currently in Korea, some uniportal reader and biportal reader, they already starting the thoracic lumbar interval fusion already success, and we think that the sufficient decompression in thorax is there is sufficient, but some of cases they need some atherotic cases. But fortunately in Korea we know that we developing the interval fusion some. Working channel with the working channel, good working channel, we already knowing that how to protect the nerves and how to making the sufficient inserting working space, cage space. Because of that, already we success the biportal interval fusion and uniportal interval fusion. I will show tomorrow thoracic interval fusion cases.
Dr. Felipe, so what is your technique of removing the ligamentum flavum? Do you remove piecemeal, do you thin out, or you eggshell it out? What is your technique?
It is usually on block. It is first. The most important thing is just to get the adequate anatomy exposure, and once you get the exposure, it basically works as a tube. And with the good stethoscope, you can go and manage the whole setup over the top. But I haven't had any complications regarding the dissection. Once you get the upper level and the lower level, you can manage to dissect really bluntly, really nicely.
So a question to Amit, thank you Felipe. So question to Amit, when you are doing the over the top, going to the opposite side, I saw your video, you were drilling extra ligamentous drilling of the bone. How much you drill the base of spinous process or spinolaminar junction to reach to the opposite recess?
So we just drill the overlying lamina till we see the articular process on the opposite side. Once we look at the articular process, then we don't go beyond it. We'll just drill at that part to remove all the bony drilling first, and then we'll attempt to remove the ligament of flavum.
Yeah. So if you are doing a monoportal surgery in thoracic spine, going the over the top is a challenge because you are using the smallest scope we can use is 7 mm with 8 mm sheath. So sometimes it becomes challenging when you want to go over the top. So you need to drill a bit of spinous process base or sometimes significant base of spinous process to reach the opposite recess. As Dr. Kim said aptly, when you take a post-op CT, both in thoracic and cervical decompressions, most of the common mistake done is the opposite side recess decompression is inadequate. So that is the important aspect because we think we have done adequately, but when you do post-op, so you don't, you might have left a significant amount of recess stenosis there. So only way is you identify the lateral edge of the thecal sac and some fat, only then you should be happy that you have done a significant decompression. So thank you gentlemen, thank you very much.
One question to Dr. Rahul and Dr. Dave.
We'll have to conclude the session, sorry.
Yeah, just last question. Is any contraindication for like considering the grades of myelopathy, any contraindication for decompression? Even Sukumar sir can enlighten us.
When you ask me, there is no contraindication for anything. You do open surgery, same thing you are doing here. So you do a tube surgery, microscopic surgery or endoscopic surgery, it is same. When there is indication for microsurgery, the indication is same for endoscopic surgery.
Multi-level. And those who are starting early, they have to keep an alarm for every hour and don't cross 2 hours anyhow or maximum 3 hours. Because I've seen patients not coming out of anesthesia, patients with brain injuries just because of fluid pressure, because somebody has continued the surgery for 4 hours, 5 hours.